it going, fam? Welcome to Versanity Studio. I'm a self-published webtoon artist. I upload contents related to webtoon creations, about life of an expat, and this segment that you're watching now where I narrate stories about urban legends, myths, and some internet stories while drawing. My webtoon, by the way, revolves around these kinds of tales. That's why I'm doing this series to improve my storytelling and character design skills, or my illustration repertoire in general. So if you're looking for something to distract or divert yourself from a very long and tiring day, this video is perfect for you. So place yourself in a comfortable position, watch the video, and listen to me while I draw. Be idle. Okay, so today my story for you, one that's sure to give you chills, is called The Whispering Shadows. But before we dive in, let me ask you something. What's the creepiest place you can think of? Go ahead and share your answers in the comments. I'd love to know what gives you the shivers. You see, this story has so many variations. Some say it happened in an old shadowy alley. Others claim it was in a graveyard or a forgotten cemetery. And then there are those who swear it all went down in an abandoned hospital. Honestly, I can't decide which of those is creepier. For me, though, the scariest place would have to be a completely silent forest. I'm talking about a forest where there's no wind rustling through the leaves, no cicadas buzzing, no crickets chirping, just this heavy, eerie silence that presses down on you, like pure, utter silence. Doesn't that send a chill to your spine? So if you're looking now at the screen, I'm almost done with the sketch. And now it's time to do the line art of our eerie forest. Alright, enough setting the mood. Let's jump into the story of the Whispering Shadows. In a quiet town somewhere, there's an old superstition that warns: never linger outside once the sun slips below the horizon. In the fading light, shadows start to stir, alive and watchful, whispering secrets and curses to anyone foolish enough to listen. The townsfolk have a name for them: the Whispering Shadows, an urban legend that has haunted countless towns for centuries, leaving fear and mystery in its wake. Once you hear their call, it's already too late. Shadows don't just follow you. They watch, they whisper, and sometimes they take you. Chapter 1: The Legend Begins. In this small, forgotten town tucked deep within dense forest, the air is thick with mystery. The streets are paved with uneven cobblestones. The houses creak with age, and the scent of damp earth lingers like an unspoken warning. But the truth enigma of this place isn't found in its buildings or streets. It lies in the shadows. The locals speak in hushed tones, warning that as dusk falls, the shadows begin to stir. They whisper secrets, call out names, and if you dare to listen too closely, they leave a mark on you that can never be undone. This forest, a dark, looming presence at the edge of town, will be the centerpiece of this story. The legend dates back centuries to a chilling event. A little girl named Eleanor wandered into the woods one fateful day and vanished without a trace. When she finally emerged, she was no longer the same. Her voice had shrunk to a faint whisper. Her eyes stared blankly into nothing, and all she could say was,
"They're coming."
That night, the whispers began, and they've never stopped since. Man, poor Eleanor. What do you think happened to her? It's such a chilling thought, isn't it? Before we dive into the next chapter, let me talk about the progress so far. So I'm still working on the line art for the forest. It's coming together now. After this, I'll move on to adding the flat colors. I'm curious to see what kind of mood I can create with the palette that I have in mind. Will it feel eerie, mysterious, or something else entirely? Let me know what you think in the comments. Chapter 2. Shadows aren't what they seem. At first, the whispers seemed random, just murmurs in the wind. But soon, people noticed patterns. The whispers often called out to those who were alone, using their names, luring them toward the forest. Many believed that the shadows were malevolent, spirits trapped in darkness. But one survivor, an old woman named Martha, had a different story. Martha claimed the shadows saved her life. She was a teenager then, wandering too close to the woods at dusk. She heard whispers, but instead of fear, she felt urgency, like the shadows were pushing her away from something worse.
"They're warnings,
She said,
not monsters. What they're warning us about is the real danger."
What do you think? Could the shadows be guardians, not enemies? Let me know your theories. If the shadows are trying to protect them, what are they protecting them from? I wonder. Chapter 3. Henry's encounter and the curse of contagion. But not everyone heeds the warnings. Take the story of Henry, the blacksmith. One night, after a few too many drinks, he stood in the middle of the square,
mocking the whispers.
Come on then!
He yelled. Whisper to me. The shadows responded. Witnesses said they saw the shadows pool around Henry, their shapes stretching unnaturally. He ran screaming into the forest, and when they found him the next morning, his shadow was frozen in a grotesque shape, like it was screaming too. After Henry's death, something strange started happening in the town. People who had encountered the shadows claimed they couldn't escape them. Even after leaving the town, they heard whispers and saw their shadows move on their own. The curse, it seemed, was contagious. Honestly, I couldn't help but be impressed by Henry. The sheer nerve it took to stand up to the shadows. Well, that's more courage than I could ever muster. Me, I can't even imagine provoking something so unknowable. If I were in his shoes, I'd probably just look the other way. Why risk attracting them when you can stay safely in the shadows of ignorance, right? That was just too much. So before we move into the next chapter, let me digress for a moment to talk about the artwork. So right now I'm working on the textures and shades of the tree trunks. So I'm done with the flat colors, and after this I will add details to the ground. I'll also add the highlights after that. I can picture it now. The forest bathed in the soft glow of a blue moon. No other light. Just the moon casting its cool, silvery hues over everything. It's hauntingly beautiful. Chapter 4. The shadows take forms of loved ones. They say the shadows don't just watch, they trick you, luring you into the forest using the faces and voices of those you love most. One of the most chilling stories involves a boy named Daniel. He was just 12 when he wandered into the woods one evening. It wasn't curiosity that led him there. It was the shadow of his mother. She appeared at the tree line, her silhouette unmistakable, her hand outstretched, beckoning him. But here's the terrifying part. Daniel's mother had passed away years earlier. He told his father later.
She said she needed my help. She called my name over and over again.
Daniel didn't hesitate. He ran into the forest, chasing the shadow of the woman he had missed so much. Can you imagine that? Seeing someone you love, someone you've lost, standing right there. It's not just fear at play, it's the pull of longing, the hope that maybe it's real. I don't know about you, but I think that's what makes this part of the story so deeply unsettling. There's an old tale that the village elder used to tell, passed down through generations. He claimed that the shadows preyed on sorrow,
They sense your grief.
he would say.
They wear the faces of those you missed most because they know you'll follow.
There's even a legend about a grieving widow who ventured into the woods after her husband's shadow appeared by her window. Neighbors said she disappeared that night, and her shadow was seen moving across walls in the village days later without her. I wonder, does that mean the shadows know us better than we know ourselves? They seem to understand our weaknesses, our pain. It's likely they study us, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. If you've ever lost someone, you probably get it. It's hard to resist the chance to see them again, even if it's dangerous. When Daniel came back, he was different. He refused to talk about what happened in the forest, except for one chilling detail. He told his father,
It wasn't her. It wasn't her at all.
from then on, his shadow started behaving strangely. In the evenings, it would twitch unnaturally, like it was trying to escape him. He would avoid looking at it, covering windows and mirrors to stop its movements from catching his eye. Do you ever think about how often we see our own shadows? On the walls, on the ground, everywhere. Imagine what it would feel like if yours started moving on its own. If it wasn't just yours anymore. I don't know if I'd ever be able to sleep again. That's scary. Daniel's story wasn't the first or the last. Years earlier, a little girl named Clara followed the shadow of her older brother into the woods. Witnesses said her parents searched for her for days, calling her name, leaving lanterns at the forest edge. When she finally returned, she wouldn't stop crying. All she would say was,
It wasn't him. I thought it was him, but it wasn't.
like Daniel, Clara seemed haunted, her shadow flickering oddly in the lamplight. Her family left town soon after. It makes you wonder, what do these shadows want? Is it just to scare us? Or is there something more sinister? Maybe they're lonely. Or maybe they're looking for replacements to join them in the darkness. These stories about the shadows taking on the forms of loved ones are what make this legend so horrifying. It's not just the fear of the unknown, it's the emotional pull, the betrayal of hope, the realization that what you saw wasn't real. As we move forward in the story, let's think about what drives these shadows. Are they monsters, spirits, something else entirely? One thing's for sure, they know exactly how to get under our skin. When I think about shadows, so many characters come to mind. Shikamaru from Naruto and Tokuyami from My Hero Academia are great examples, both using shadows in unique and powerful ways. But there's one character that stands out above the rest, not because of power or strategy, but because of the role shadows play in his story. It's Peter Pan, the boy who never grows up, a timeless figure from our childhoods. His mischievous shadow isn't just a companion, it's a symbol of freedom, innocence, and maybe even a little mystery. When you think of Peter Pan's shadow, it's usually a playful image, right? The mischievous, lively thing that's always darting away from him, causing chaos. But what if Peter's shadow wasn't so innocent? Imagine this. The shadows in our story might have started just like that, playful, curious, and free. They weren't born malevolent. They were simply untethered from their owners, roaming the world. But over time, something changed. The shadows grew bitter, lost without their other halves. They became envious of the living, of those who still had the light. There's a story told by an old storyteller in the village about a boy who loved the idea of flying away, of never growing up. He was carefree, just like Peter Pan, and his shadow was his closest companion. But one day, that boy abandoned his shadow, choosing to leave it behind as he escaped into the skies.
Shadows don't forget betrayal,
The old man would say.
and they don't forgive.
The legend claims that Peter's shadow, if that was even his real name, became the first of the whispering shadows. It roamed the forest, calling out the other shadows that had been forgotten or left behind. Together, they grew stronger, and soon they weren't just shadows anymore. They became something darker, something alive. There's a creepy story tied to this legend. There's a woman who swore she saw Peter's shadow one night. She described it as unnaturally long, with jagged edges that seemed to ripple like fire.
It didn't act like a shadow.
She said,
It wasn't attached to anyone. It moved on its own, darting between the trees. And then it spoke. It said, "Come with me. I'll show you how to fly."
the woman didn't go, but the memory haunted her for years. She claimed that the shadow wasn't offering freedom. It was offering something much darker. Think about that for a second. What would you do if a shadow, just a shadow, asked you to follow it? Would curiosity get the better of you? Or would fear keep you frozen in place? Honestly, if it were me, I think I'd just freeze on the spot. I mean, that's so creepy. I wouldn't even know what to do. The more you think about it, the more the whispering shadows feel like the dark mirror of Peter Pan's story. In the fairy tale, Peter's shadow is playful. But what if it had been abandoned long enough to grow bitter? The shadows in this legend are what happens when they're forgotten, left to fend for themselves in the dark. They lure you in with promises, just like Peter Pan promised Wendy and her brothers adventure. But instead of taking you to Neverland, they take you to a place where you're trapped forever. A land of endless twilight, where shadows rule and you'll never be whole again. It makes you wonder, are shadows more than just reflections of ourselves? Could they carry parts of us we don't even know exist? Maybe Peter Pan's shadow was trying to warn us all along. After all, if your shadow starts acting on its own, isn't that just another way of saying you've lost control of yourself? So the next time you think of Peter Pan chasing his shadow, imagine what would happen if he stopped chasing it altogether. What if you just let it go and it found its way to the forest, to the other whispering shadows? Maybe Peter's shadow wasn't so innocent after all. The parallels between the playful fairy tale and the eerie legends are striking, don't you think? What if the stories we grew up with are just masks for something darker? Hey, if you've made it this far into the video, I just want to say a huge thank you. Honestly, it means so much to me that you're here and watching. It's your support that keeps me going and inspires me to create more. If you're enjoying the content so far, don't forget to give this video a like. It really helps. And if you're new here, I'd be so grateful if you'd consider subscribing for more videos like this. You guys are amazing, and I truly appreciate every one of you. Alright, let's jump back into it. I've got so much more to share with you. Here's a little update on the illustration progress so far. I've added some shadows to the ground to really give it more depth and bring the scene to life. To fill in some of the empty spaces, I worked on adding a few bushes and scattered grasses here and there for the extra detail. I also spent some time refining the ground itself. It's those small details that really pull everything together. Next up, the exciting part. I'm about to add the character to the illustration. This is where it really starts to feel complete. So stay tuned as it all comes together. Right now, I'm working on the sketch, trying to capture an eerie vibe with a character. Chapter 5: Sarah's Disappearance and the Pact. In more recent times, tourists have been drawn to town by the legend. One such visitor was a blogger named Sarah. She recorded her exploration of the town at dusk, capturing footage of her shadow moving independently, stepping forward before she did, as if leading her somewhere. She ended the video abruptly, saying she felt watched. A week later, Sarah disappeared. Months later, strange videos began uploading from Sarah's account. They showed fleeting glimpses of her in the forest. Her voice faint and desperate.
Help me!
Some believe Sarah became part of the shadows, forever trapped between worlds. An old diary found in town's library hinted at the origins of the shadows. Centuries ago, the townsfolk made a pact with the spirits of the forest. They promised to offer a life every decade in exchange for protection. But when the pact was broken, the shadows began claiming lives at random. This means the shadows aren't just random entities. They're the debt collectors of an ancient bargain. And so the story of the Whispering Shadows comes to a chilling end. Or does it? Sarah's disappearance and the haunting videos that followed remind us that some mysteries are meant to remain untouched. Her tale has left a deep imprint on the legend of the town. Turning it from a local curiosity into a cautionary tale for anyone daring to meddle with the unknown. But what truly makes this story unsettling is the revelation of the pact. The shadows aren't mindless apparitions or random phenomena. They are agents of justice or vengeance, fulfilling an ancient contract long forgotten by the living but never relinquished by the forest. They serve as eerie reminders of a debt unpaid, of promises broken, and of the lengths the supernatural will go to restore balance. The idea that the shadows move with purpose, that they're not only observers but collectors, adds a disturbing layer of intent to their actions. Sarah wasn't just some random, unlucky victim. She was chosen. Perhaps her exploration and her vlogging brought too much attention to the town's secrets, angering the forest spirits. Or maybe she wandered too close to a truth that demanded her silence. The diary found in the library tells us that this curse is not the fault of the shadows, but of humanity's greed and desperation. The townsfolk of centuries past made a deal, hoping to secure their safety without truly understanding the cost. The fact that they broke the pact, knowing the consequences, speaks volumes about their hubris and fear. They thought they could cheat forces far greater than themselves, and they were wrong. Now, the shadows roam freely, untethered by the rules of the pact. They're no longer content with taking a single life every decade. They take when they choose, how they choose. And as long as the town exists, so will the debt. It's a very disturbing thought that the townspeople live under constant surveillance, every step in the twilight carrying the risk of being the next chosen. What's even more haunting is how the legend continues to evolve. Sarah's disappearance has become part of the story, a modern warning stitched into the fabric of this old urban myth. This brings us to a lingering question. How many other Sarahs have there been? How many shadows in that town belong to those who once walked freely, but now remain bound to the forest forever? Are the whispers we hear at dusk the voices of the cursed, warning us to stay away or luring us closer to share their fate? As the light fades and the shadows stretch longer, we're left with an unsettling truth. The town's story isn't over. The shadows remain, watching and waiting. And for those brave or foolish enough to explore the town, the legend of the Whispering Shadows is less of a story and more of a warning. Be careful what you uncover, for some secrets should never see the light of day. For now, the shadows have claimed Sarah, but tomorrow it could be someone else, or perhaps it could be you. So here's the deal. The best thing anyone can do is to stay on their toes during what people call the whispering hour. You know, that creepy hour right after sunset when the shadows are supposedly at their strongest. The stories say if you stop and actually listen to them, they'll start calling your name. And if you answer, well, let's just say you might not make it out of that alley, forest, or even your own house. Now, I gotta tell you something weird. Ever since I started working on this story, drawing the forest, sketching out all those creepy shadows, I've noticed some, let's call them coincidences. Like, I could swear my shadow stretched way longer across my desk than it normally does. And no joke, I thought I heard a whisper. I mean, it's probably just my brain messing with me because of this whole spooky vibe, right? But hey, if I mysteriously disappear after uploading this video, at least you'll know what happened.
So now I'm working on the highlights. This is one of my favorite parts of the process. It's where the whole piece starts to come to life. I'm focusing on bringing out those subtle pops of light that really make the character stand out. The highlights add so much dimension, like they're stepping right out of the illustration. I'm almost done with the character now, but I'm still tweaking a few small details here and there. You know how it is, those little adjustments can make a big difference. Whether it's refining the soft edges, softening a shadow, or adding a tiny glow, it's all about making the artwork feel complete. Alright, so I'm just noticing something about this part right here, the chest area. It's a bit off, isn't it? The placement is definitely not proportional, and it's not anatomically correct either. So I'm going to make some corrections here. Honestly, this kind of thing happens all the time when you're deep in the zone. You get so focused on the bigger picture, and then bam, you notice something that's just a little off. I know some of you out there, our beloved men of culture, might have already caught this before I did. My bad. But that's the beauty of digital art, right? You can fix things on the go. I'll just adjust the proportions here, tweak the positioning a little, and make sure everything lines up the way it should. This is a great reminder that art is all about refinement. Even when you think you're done with a section, your eye catches something that can be improved. And you go back to correct it, to make it perfect. It's all part of the process. And honestly,
These little moments of fixing things are what make the final piece feel so polished. Let me know if you've ever had a moment like this, where you had to go back and fix something that just didn't sit right with you. It's all a learning curve, right? Anyway, let's get this sorted out and keep moving forward. Alright, now for the final touch to bring this whole illustration together. I'm adding this little branch right here in the foreground. It's such a small detail, but it's amazing how much of a difference it can make. By blurring it slightly, I can create a nice perspective effect. Which really helps to add depth to the overall scene. It's like framing the picture in a way that draws your eye toward the character and the shadows in the background. And here's something creepy for you guys to think about. They say the shadows spread through stories. By sticking around and listening to this tale, you might have invited them a little closer. So if you hear whispers tonight or catch your shadows acting a little off, maybe stretching too far or moving when you don't ignore it. And whatever you do, don't answer. We're almost there. I think we've all had our fair share of chills with the eerie drawing, the haunting story, and the overall vibe of this video. But now, it's time to tie it all together. Let's not wait any longer, and it's time for the big reveal. What do you think of the drawing? Does it capture the eerie vibe of the story? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if you have an urban legend you'd like me to bring to life, share it below. I'd be thrilled to narrate and illustrate it for you guys. By the way, If you're curious to see more of my artwork, you can check it out on Webtoon. Just search for the title The Goon and you'll find the full volume 1 there. I'll also drop the link in the description for you. Go give it a look. I'd love to hear what you think. And again, thank you so much for watching, Insane Fam. If you enjoyed the video and want more like it, don't forget to smash that like button, hit subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss an update. Stay curious, stay safe, and remember, don't let the shadows take you. I'll catch you on the next one. Yalla bye.